Hello, this is Rolando Carrasco and Leonardo Gonzalez from Mexico, and this is part of the presentation that we delivered during the Oracle Code Los Angeles back in February 27, 2018, and it's about API design principles. This is what we presented. We are just going to go through some of the slides that we presented during the event, and then we are going to repeat the whole demo that we delivered during the Oracle Code. So this is about API design principles. That's the objective of the session, and good practices with Oracle Apiary. And this is part of the digital transformation content that we've been creating during the past 18-24 months. And we feel that digital transformation or the APIs are a very key important element for digital transformation. We can even say that the APIs are the building blocks for that. If we are talking about external APIs, then definitely they are a key role. They play a key role during the digital transformation, and this what we are presenting here in the slides is a reflection of that, because every time we use an Uber or we check in a hotel via the web page or the mobile application, or we do a check-in via the mobile application of an airline, it is highly probable that we are using APIs. And we can even say what it is in the title of this slide about the digital transformation turned me speechless, and thanks to the APIs, because we can make a trip, for example, from Mexico City to Los Angeles without even talking to anyone, because we can take an Uber from our home to the airport, and then we can check in to the airline from our mobile application, and also when we get to Los Angeles we can take another Uber from the airport to the hotel, and then during the Uber trip we can make the check-in using the mobile application of the hotel, and everything from the integration perspective, it is because there are APIs in place. So it is true that we can do those type of things, those type of common daily things, without the need of talking with someone, which is not good. That is not what we would like to highlight, but at the same time it's true. We can do those type of things, and it is because the APIs are there. So we were talking also with one of our colleagues, and I think he was doing an article or it was an interview, I don't remember quite well, but Phil Wilkins was talking about this, about that we are living on a happy world, and that's true. The APIs are coming into a very important role in this digital transformation era, and they are part of very large initiatives of many organizations who are looking to create a new business, or they are looking to create new channels for new revenue, and APIs are there. They are actually creating an API economy, and that is why we are living on this happy world. And it is not just about exposing REST services or web services. No, it's because we are, as an organization, we are trying to sell a product, and we need to understand that those APIs are actually a product of our organization. So that is part of the relevance of this session, and that is why we say that the APIs are everywhere. They are part of our daily basis tasks that we perform during or constantly. They are everywhere in terms of the usage of mobile applications or IoT, or even web applications, or any functionality. Probably it is because someone exposed an API. Developers are more than ever looking to create or to consume those web APIs. That is part of the new way of creating applications or creating modern application. It is a very key or very important element in that development. But ultimately, what is an API? What we can say about web APIs? We are not going to deliver a definition about it, because there are many definitions that you can actually find in the internet. That is not our objective, but what we are going to do is to complement that definition. And while we complement that definition, we can say that an API is a product, and that is exactly what we are trying to highlight in these slides. So whatever definition you may have, we are going to add that everything that you have in your head about what is a web API, you need to add that at the end of the day it is a product. And what is the relationship with web services or services, microservices, functions, or whatever? Well, there is a relationship, obviously. There is something technical, of if we focus on the technical side of the house, then definitely there are some similarities with those concepts. And yes, we can say that, if we analyze a little bit about, because of the HTTP protocol or the web services standards, or if we are exposing something to the external world that was previously developed by us as a service, and then we can call that an API, that is true. And we can say that those things are kind of similar, or that they look alike, or they look the same, but they are not generated for the same purpose. Actually, the APIs are generated for a very different purpose, and that purpose is because we would like to expose something to the external world that we would like them to use, and probably we can create revenue with that. So that is a product by itself. That is a product that we are creating and that we would like consumers to buy it. So that's the main difference. We are not just talking about presenting a web service to the outside, or a service, or whatever. No, it is because we are building a product. So they are not the same thing. They look alike probably, but they are different things. They share the same protocol, probably the same interface, but ultimately they are intended for different purposes. And that is the reason why we need specific design principles to expose those APIs. That's the relevance. If we take care about some elements that we can highlight when we are defining the APIs, we can say these three things. Let's just take a minute to analyze it. When we are doing service orientation or services, it is because we are trying to reduce cost. And that reusability, it is because we would like to reduce costs during projects. But APIs are targeted to generate money. They are targeted for a different purpose. We are looking to create a new revenue channel for our organization. So it is a different thing. One is to reduce the cost, and the other one is to produce a new revenue. So therefore, the APIs are a product for our company. Okay, so they need to be very well designed, very well presented, very well documented. It is your product. Any product that you offer to the market, it is the face of your company. So you need to really have those good design principles. And on the other hand, that product needs to be designed for durability, for longevity. Okay, they need to keep pace during the upcoming months or maybe years, and they need to be valid for many consumers that are going to be using your APIs, and probably some of them are going to be using some versions, and some others are going to be using different versions, and so on. So that's the reason why we need design principles, and that's the reason why a tool to design those APIs is needed. You need a good tool to design and to apply those principles. At the end of the day, as we've been saying, it is a product, and it has to be, or you need to take care about it, and probably you need to spend time to design it. It is not just about publishing and that's it. Or, okay, I already have a service and it has already a REST interface, and expose it and I call it an API. No, you need to design it first. You need to apply some principles. It is like if you were buying this type of products, the one that is in the screen now. Those Campbell soups, they are ready to be used. Just as our APIs, we need to build ready-to-use APIs, but in order for that, you need to have good design principles. You don't want your customers to have a hard time to recognize how to use your APIs. How many times have you been calling the Campbell's soup call center in order to understand how to prepare the soup. Never. You never do that, because of two reasons. Why? Because you already know how to prepare it, and or you are used on those type of products, or secondly, whatever is in the box, it is good enough for you to understand how to use it and what are the elements for that product to be used. So that is exactly the same thing with the APIs. We need to create ready to use APIs. We don't want to have our customers, our consumers, to have a hard time understanding, reading, or whatever, and then after hours or long hours they can start using your API. No, it has to be very well designed in order for them to use it just at the time they subscribe to them. So this is our last slide, the demonstration. I am here with Leonardo Gonzalez, as I mentioned in the beginning of this, and he's actually going to deliver part of this demonstration. We are going to apply or try to apply these 7 design principles that we feel are at least they are a base for these API design principles. Discoverability, we need to document in a proper way our APIs. If they are going to be published in the internet and we are going to have users or consumers looking for them, we need a very good documentation. Abstraction, we don't want the consumers to know how we built our APIs. Our APIs needs to be published for the external world, but we don't need to reveal that we are using a specific API gateway or we are using a service bus because we are reusing a service that we already had in place, or we are using a specific database or a specific programming language. And we don't need to reveal any of that, and actually because of security reasons, it is also a good recommendation to avoid that. We need to have a good versioning strategy for our APIs, to have a standardized service contract, autonomy, longevity, naming convention. So those type of principles needs to be applied to your APIs if you are really looking to create good APIs. So we are going to use 2 things: Oracle Apiary as the tool to build, to design, to document the APIs, and we are going to use API Blueprint as the way to describe our APIs. So I am going to let Leonardo to introduce himself and introduce the type of demo that we are going to deliver. He's actually going to create an API from scratch. He's going to make a first version of that API, then we are going to review it and see if he were applying or not design principles, and then we are going to elaborate on how to apply those good principles, and then you are going to see the difference between the first version and the final version of the same API. After that, we are going to use some command lines utilities from Apiary, sorry. So you can see how besides using the web UI of Apiary, we can use some command line utilities to make some validations and test. So Leonardo is going to start with the demo.
Hello everybody, my name is Leonardo Gonzalez and I'm going to show you this demo. In order to use Apiary, you only need to sign up in the website, and that's it. Then sign in, request for the free version of the platform, and then just use it. If you want to create a new API definition, you can use this option and then press this button, create new API project. So this is the first version of the API. Imagine we need to create a marketplace API. So probably we will need some resources for payments, for orders, for fulfill that orders, for notifications to our customers, or pack and ship services, and that kind of stuff. So the first part of the API, it's a brief description about how this API can work, and then we are going to define the resources contained in this API. The first resource, I call it payment. This is for validate card payments, and I will need card information such as card number, expire date, card name, card type, some information about billing, and an authorization amount. Suppose we need to validate that information, and we will have a response like this to say if the payment is authorized or if the payment is denied. And the next resource is to create orders in our system. I'm using an HTTP post in order to receive the order information. I'm going to receive information about billing, shipping, contact, and the list of the items that I need to include in my order, such as this information: SQI, quantity, unit price, brand, model, category, and description. Okay. Then, as a response of this resource, I'm going to have the order number and the location of that order in my system. Okay. I need to fulfill the order once it is created. So in order to fulfill that order, I'm going to need billing information, shipping, contact information, and the same list of the items that I need to include in my order. As a response, I'm going to send a message indicating that this order is ready for ship, for example. And finally, I will need a resource to select a shipping provider, an external provider, in order to ship this order to my final customer. Then I'm going to use the shipping information, contact information, and the order number. As a response, I'm going to have the same shipping information and the contact of the customer, contact information. Imagine we need to send an email notification to my customer in order to indicate that the order was shipped or is ready for ship, and then I'm going to use a different resource that I need to define in my API. Let's say it's an email notification, and I'm going to use as input information the email address of my customer, a subject, and a message, and that I need to include in my email. As response, I'm going to have a notification that if my email was sent successfully or not. So this is the first version of my API. Let's see what is wrong, what is right, what is so. Then, Rolando, can you take a look at this and say your comments?
Yes, so let's take a look. Let's just get back to our slides, and this is when we are going to analyze how well Leonardo was applied some of these principles. So let's get back to Apiary. So in line number 6, it's supposed to be some type of documentation and introduction about this API. So to be quite honest, this is not very good, because if the API is, for example, as Leonardo was explaining, a type of a marketplace or something, and this is his introduction and this is his documentation, this is very poor. So we need to have a strong documentation about this. Another comment is that I don't see, at least in the resources, neither in the URI or nor in the headers. I don't see any header. There is no versioning on this. So I think his versioning strategy is not even present. Or if he's using versioning just because he's saying this is the v1 of this API, this is also something not so accurate, because maybe I can understand that this is version number 1, yes, but what happens if I change something in this resource? So everyone who is consuming this is going to be affected, so that is also wrong. Another thing that I see is that the name of some of the resources, or even the elements, they seem not to follow a standard. So he's just describing some of the things but not following a standard. I don't see a JSON schema as defined here or something like that. Also, I think he's mixing some of the resources. For example, he's talking about fulfillment right there. Now he's talking about order, and then if we go to the end of this, then we find notification and email. So he's actually mixing things or entities within the API. So yes, this could be useful. This actually Apiary is saying that this is a valid document, which is good. Semantically has no issues. If we actually taste some of these resources, is going to work, is going to respond. But I don't see any versioning nor documentation. Naming conventioning also is not present. I don't see any exception management, or he's not describing any other case where something may be wrong or goes wrong with a particular resource. So this is exactly what we want to highlight. This is a normal description of a set of resources, but this is not a product. This is just an interface being described and being documented with a tool. So now Leonardo is going to change it, and you are going to see some of the difference that now that he's going to apply some of the design principles.
Okay, so I'm going to create a new version of this API. So let me just select it right here in order to apply the most of these design principles that we mentioned about before. So the first part of this new version of the API is a stronger description in it. This API is designed to interact with our marketplace services. If you are a producer of goods and wants to sell some of them, this is the way to get into the market. This is a better description in the API. So let's organize the resources, and let's say we need different kind of categories to categorize or to order the different kind of products in our marketplace. So I have the first resource. I'm using the get HTTP method in order to get all the categories available in the system. So I'm defining the response of the service or the resource. I have different kind of categories like cars, books and movies, toys, sports, health, and others. Imagine we need to create a different category because my product needs a different one. So I will need, in the same resource called category, I'm going to define another HTTP method, let's say post, in order to save or a different category, let's say clothes and shoes. And I'm using a different kind of HTTP code as a response. Imagine we need to update an existing category, so I'm going to use the put HTTP method in order to update an existing category in my system. And so let's say we need to create different kind of products under the different categories I have in the system. So I'm going to expose a different resource called products. and different HTTP methods for that resource. For example, get that get all the products available in my system. Each product is categorized under a different category. For example, a BMW, it's a car, Millennium Falcon, it's a toy, Giant 2018 Escape City is a bicycle, it's under sports, a box of aspirins, it's under health category, and that kind of products. So let's say we need to create a new product. We are going to use the post method to create a different product under category sports. And finally, we need to design some queries, different queries, to get different kind of products. For example, products under category sports. So I'm going to receive a Giant helmet, Giant bike, or football shoes, or that kind of things in my system. This API, I think it's better. It has different kind of resources. The resources are in order. I think it's better than the previous one. Let's look.
Yes,
what Rolando is.
Definitely, this looks better. You are already versioning your resources. This is a way to do it. We are not saying that this is the only way to versioning, but this is a way. You are using a versioning at the resource level, or at the URI level, so that's good. Your definition about your API seems to be better. So yes, we can look or search through the internet, and maybe we can. If this is already tagged, we can find something about it, and that's good. Also, we see that you are defining in a better way the elements of your messages, which is also good. You are different HTTP verbs to represent different actions in your resources, which is also good. The naming conventions are better. You are using plural to defining your entities, so you are using products instead of product, which is also good. And finally, I feel that you did not mix some of the entities or scopes of the API. So all the resources that are described here, all the collections are related with each other. So we can say this is an API for whatever you are intended for this, in this case, the marketplace. For Apiary, again, this is good. This is a valid document, which is good. There are some other validations that we need to perform. And right now, we are doing good because the version is there. The naming convention seems to be there, but we are not validating them so far. We need to make some extra steps, extra things that we are about to show to you in order to validate, for example, the name of the resource, some of the naming conventions that you are using inside the URI. So those other things can also be developed and can also be applied using Apiary, and that is in the Styleguide Apiary capabilities, which is part of the Pro subscription of Apiary. So we have that Pro subscription in this case, and Leonardo is actually going to create two things: functions that are going to be developed to apply on top of your API blueprints, so you can validate different things such as naming conventions and so on. And secondly, rules that are going to be or that defines those functions that you want to apply to your specific API blueprints. So that is exactly what Leonardo is about to show you, and we are going to see how to create functions which are actually based on JavaScript and how to test those functions.
So yes, take a look into the API definition. Is not enough for us. We need to create functions or code that help us to validate that the API is accomplishing or is well defined according to the design principles mentioned before. So I'm going to create the API definition and go to this section of the platform. Let's select the playground tab, and I'm going to paste my API definition. Rolando talked about roles and function definition. A function is written in JavaScript. So the roles are all that define all that functions we need to apply to our API definition for validation purposes. So let's see the bottom of this column. We are applying two different functions. Is plural function and validate URI part separated lowercase. So I'm going to copy and paste my JavaScript code, just right here, and I'm going to run the tests. Okay, so that I need to validate is my resource has a version number. Then I need to indicate the name of the function right here, and I'm going to disable this validate camel casing response bodies function. I'm going to search it here, and I'm going to disable because I don't need to execute this validation in my response. I don't want. So I'm going to disable this validation and run the test again. So this resource name category is not in plural. I need to define this in plural because it's a best practice. So what the result is saying is that my category URI is not in plural. So I'm going to change this name categories as categories. Then I have a completely right API definition. Okay, if I delete the version number in this URI, then JavaScript code will say that my categories has not a version number. Okay, then this is simple JavaScript code. Let's see the has version number function is using a regular expression to indicate that my resource should have a /v at the beginning of the resource name, then a number, and then any word in it. So this is this pattern. Okay, /v1 categories. Then run the test again, and this API is without any failures. Okay, this is the result of executing these rules. Let's say these two, validate resources plural and validate version number with this JavaScript code. Okay.
So as you can see, he is using JavaScript for defining those functions that we share with you a little bit here in this notepad, and those functions are basically JavaScript code. So if you have experience on JavaScript, or you have a developer on JavaScript, they can, or he or she can easily create this type of functions. Secondly, he created a JSON file with the rules if I copy and paste this thing right here, this is basically a JSON file, and it contains some elements that help us to define our rules. And actually this is related with the functions because the function name is right here. Okay, so he just basically wrote this JSON and that JavaScript function, and then here in Apiary applied to our API blueprint those rules, which at the same time are calling the functions. And the result is the validation, not only about the semantics, but also about any type of validations that we want to apply to our collections, to our resources, to our messages, and so on. So you can see, or you can imagine how powerful this can be. Currently, we are using everything from the web UI. So Leonardo has access to the web UI. He's probably one of the API designers. Okay, he is designing this thing together with probably some other persons. And what if we are not someone who has access to the web UI, but we are a role, or we are playing a role where we just want to validate it. We just want to apply the rules to our, or to the API blueprints. So for that regard, we have our Apiary offers a command line interface, okay, which is a Ruby based command line interface that you can download from GitHub, and it has these 6 options. So what we are going to do first is we are positioned here in this folder. We have the functions, which are the same functions as Leonardo, or I just showed to you in the notepad. Also, I have here the rules JSON file, which is exactly the same that I shared with you a few minutes ago. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to fetch. Okay, I'm going to fetch the API blueprint that I want to apply those functions. So I'm going to use this. Okay, so I'm going to call this Leo API blueprint. Okay, if I do a more, then I have Leo's blueprint right here. Okay, then I am going to execute the style guide. Okay, and I just need to use the add option and then the name of the API blueprint. And because oh, this is something wrong. Okay, I just did something wrong. So because I have the functions and the rules in the same, at the same level, in the same directory, this is going to apply the same thing as you saw in the demonstration by Leo. And here is telling me that the resource URI template is not okay, because the validation is that the resources are not in plural. Okay, if I do a more on Leo API blueprint, we can see that category is not. Okay, so I am going to change it, so I can do this, and I'm going to say this is categories, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to save that out. I'm going to apply it again. And as you can see, all test has passed. Okay, so we are having the same experience than in the web UI, but now in the command line interface. So you can imagine now how the process can be. I can be just one of the approvers for this. I don't need to get access to the web UI, but I do have access for the command line interface. So far we've seen many elements, right? The first thing is that we define the API as a product. We say that our APIs need to be ready to use. In order to make them ready to use, they need to be following some design principles. This is what we suggest to you to have as a preliminary list of design principles. Also, we show you how to use Apiary to document, to design, to define your API. Some semantic validation that gets while using the Apiary editor. But we take a second step in order to validate some other additional things like naming conventions and so on, and that has been demo by writing some JavaScript code to create functions and some rules in order to apply those rules and functions to our API blueprint. We showed to you how to use it via the web UI and also via a command line interface. But what about if we want to test our APIs? So everything is valid now. We are okay. We are ready to test them. Okay. We don't want to wait for the API to be developed, and we want to test it right away. So we are going to this other option, test, and then tutorial. You need to install Dread. You can use it using npm. Actually, this is described here. Once you already have Dread, then you just need to copy and paste this. Okay. You need to open a command line. I already have here the API blueprint. I need to download it and place it in the directory where we are going to work. And once the API blueprint is there, I just paste this. Okay. And this is going to ask me some questions, and after that I will test every single resource that was described or it is described in my API blueprint. So let's just wait this to execute, and we are going to show you how to test it. Okay, I don't know why it is taking this long, but let's just give it some seconds to it. Okay, so the first thing is asking me if the Apiary API blueprint is in this directory, and it is. If we go to users and Rolando, which is where I am, and then we look for Apiary and we open it in Notepad, it is the same as Leonardo showed to you. Okay, so we already have it there. We just click enter and then again enter. This is going to run the Rails server. The URL for testing purposes will be that one. This is going to be using Node.js. Just click enter again, and then I just click Dread, and this is actually going to test every single resource of our API blueprint. Okay, once it finish that testing, it is going to create a report, and that report is going to be available in apiary.io, so we can actually see the results of the test. The all tests are going to be failing because of the endpoint that used for test the resources, and sorry about it. Then I am just going to copy this. And I did not paste the right thing. Where is this one? Okay. Okay. And if we copy and paste this thing right here, we're going to see every test of every single resource. Okay, so that's it. That's what we presented during the Oracle Code Los Angeles, and hopefully this is useful for you. Thank you.
Thank you everybody. I think the most important thing is you can code your JavaScript functions in order to validate the different kind of design principles to apply in our API's definition, and then use it and reuse it in the different API blueprints that you can write. So you can reuse that JavaScript code and then decide which functions you need to apply in every different API you write.
Okay, yeah, that's true, and that's a very good summary. So yes, try this and apply it to any single API that you may have, so you can actually create it as a standard for your delivery process and for your creation and design process. So that was a very good comment. So thank you again.